The mark of the devil or the mark of God, the misunderstood history of the all-seeing eye symbol. You might be deceived. You are currently afraid of Jesus, God's ultimate protective symbol. For years you believed the all-seeing eye was a mark of global control and the Illuminati. But the truth is, it's a centuries-old Christian symbol, a promise of benevolent providence. It's time to know the truth. Are you fighting against your own blessing? The all-seeing eye, a symbol of contradiction. It is arguably the most recognizable and most misunderstood symbol in the Western world. You see it emblazoned upon the Great Seal of the United States, floating above an unfinished pyramid on the back of every dollar bill. You also see it rendered in gilded gold and painted frescoes, high above the altars of ancient Catholic and Orthodox cathedrals across Europe. This is the Eye of Providence, often known today as the all-seeing eye. Its presence is ubiquitous, but its meaning is bifurcated, split between two radically opposed narratives. For some, it is the ultimate affirmation of Christian doctrine, a powerful, comforting reminder of the omniscience of Jesus, God, and his unwavering divine providence, actively sustaining creation. For others, it is the sinister marker of a new world order, the secret emblem of global control, the undeniable fingerprint of the Illuminati or Freemasonry. The symbol, therefore, stands at the nexus of faith, history, and conspiracy theory. The challenge of this inquiry is to move beyond the sensational and to establish a clear, verifiable timeline of the symbol's use. Our commitment is to academic rigor. We are not interested in propagating modern myths. We are interested in uncovering the symbol's true, deep historical roots. We will demonstrate that the Eye of Providence existed as a common, uncontroversial Christian icon for centuries before it was adopted by any secret society or printed on any modern currency. We will trace its genesis from ancient pagan protection symbols through its theological adoption by Renaissance artists, and finally analyze the precise moment it transitioned into the realm of secular governance and later conspiracy theory. By the end of this journey, the true meaning of the all-seeing eye will be clear. It is a potent symbol of vigilance and supreme authority, but its interpretation depends entirely on which era you stand in. We begin by examining the universal language of the eye, long before Christianity laid claim to it. Early origins, the eye in ancient mythology. To truly understand the Eye of Providence, we must first recognize that the motif of the solitary, vigilant eye far predates Christianity. Across disparate ancient cultures, the eye consistently served as the most powerful and immediate symbol of divine surveillance, protection, and wholeness. This universal psychological power ensured its later seamless incorporation into Christian art. The most famous pre-Christian iteration is the Eye of Horus, known to the Egyptians as the Ujate, or this symbol was meticulously detailed, combining the human eye with the markings of a falcon. The ancient Egyptians saw the Eye of Horus as a powerful apotropaic amulet, a tool of magical protection against harm, sickness, and decay. Mythologically, the eye was restored to Horus after being damaged in battle, giving it a profound significance related to healing, restoration, and cosmic integrity. This established the eye as a symbol associated not with simple viewing, but with active, powerful intervention and completeness. Moving across the Mediterranean, the prevalence of the evil eye superstition across Roman and Hellenistic cultures further cemented the eye's dualistic power. The belief held that certain malevolent gazes could inflict injury, illness, or misfortune upon the unsuspecting. As a countermeasure, various civilizations from the Phoenicians to the Greeks and Romans developed symbolic eyes or oculi to ward off this invisible threat. These eyes, often painted on the bows of ships or worn as talismans, were designed to return the malicious gaze, ensuring protection through vigilance. In this context, the eye represented a supreme, vigilant watchfulness, a constant state of defense against spiritual or physical harm. The collective impact of these ancient traditions established a powerful visual vocabulary that Christianity would inherit. When Christian theologians and artists began looking for ways to represent the abstract concepts of omnipresence and divine knowledge, the eye was the natural, pre-loaded icon. It was already culturally recognized as an emblem of a power that transcended human understanding, a force that restored wholeness and guarded against chaos. This foundational understanding is crucial. The Church did not invent the symbol of the eye, but rather sanctified and refined, an ancient universal symbol to articulate a new, supreme theological truth. This adoption process marked the final step before the symbol became intrinsically Christian. Emergence in classical Christian art. The true Christian identity of the Eye of Providence began to coalesce during the medieval and early Renaissance periods, a time when the Church actively sought visual ways to convey complex doctrines to a largely illiterate populace. The inherent simplicity and power of the eye proved invaluable for representing the most difficult concept of all, the nature of the triune God. By the 15th century, the symbol was appearing, albeit in slightly varied forms, in European illuminated manuscripts and church architecture. The key transformative step was the incorporation of the eye into a triangle. The triangular shape is the most direct visual representation of the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the three distinct persons in one God. When the eye was placed within this geometric structure, it became unambiguously theological, the single, all-seeing eye of the one Godhead. This was not a subtle or secret symbol, it was a clear, public declaration of faith. Early forms of the symbol showed the eye sometimes integrated into clouds or surrounded by bursts of light, often positioned high on ceilings or above altarpieces. Its placement was deliberate, signifying a heavenly perspective, emphasizing the doctrine of omniscience, the quality of infinite knowledge. The viewer looking up at the altar would be visually reminded that the Lord was witnessing their worship, their prayers, and their intentions. Significantly, the Christian utilization of the eye often included ray emissions projecting outwards from the triangle. These rays symbolized the divine light of holiness, the illumination of truth, and the active spread of God's grace across the world. They counteracted any passive or punitive reading of the symbol, instead casting the eye as a source of active, benevolent revelation. The purpose was not to instill fear of a distant spy, but to assure the faithful of an ever-present, watchful Father. The symbol was rooted in the scriptural mandate that the Christian life is lived coram Deo, in the presence of Jesus God. The eye was the artistic proxy for that spiritual reality. This transformation cemented the icon's identity, preparing it for its philosophical and theological expansion into the concept of providence. Part 4. Divine Providence, the core theological concept. While the eye represents omniscience, knowing all, when paired with the concept of providence, it takes on a deeper, more profound meaning. The term divine providence is the crucial philosophical and theological anchor for this symbol, moving it far beyond mere surveillance and into the realm of active, sustained governance. Providence, derived from the Latin providentia, foreknowledge, foresight, is the doctrine stating that Jesus God not only created the world, but actively sustains, governs, and directs all events and creation toward his ultimate divine purpose. It is the belief that every action, no matter how small or seemingly random, is held within the framework of God's sovereign will. The symbol, therefore, is not simply a camera watching the world. It is a declaration of active maintenance. When a Christian artist painted the Eye of Providence, they were articulating the belief expressed powerfully in the book of Proverbs. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Proverbs 15:3. This is not passive observation, it is a moral, guiding gaze. The eye reminds the believer that even in suffering, chaos, or confusion, the ultimate control and meaning are held by a loving and perfect intelligence. In the 17th century, the concept of providence was central to both Catholic and Protestant theology, influencing everything from political philosophy to personal piety. The visible eye of providence served as a tangible expression of this invisible metaphysical reality. It reassured individuals that their lives were not subject to blind chance or capricious fate, but were orchestrated by a divine hand. This theological significance stands in direct, stark contrast to the later interpretation of the symbol by secret societies. While conspiracies view the eye as a mark of hidden, malevolent control by an elite few, the Christian doctrine views it as the visible assurance of ultimate, benevolent order maintained by the Creator for the benefit of all creation. Part 5. Standardization during the Renaissance and Baroque eras. By the time Europe reached the heights of the Renaissance and Baroque periods, roughly the 16th through the 18th centuries, the visual language of the Eye of Providence had become completely standardized and universally accepted within the Christian artistic lexicon. This period is vital because it firmly places the symbol into the public, mainstream consciousness decades before its widespread adoption by organizations like Freemasonry. The standardized form was solidified, the single eye resting firmly inside an equilateral triangle, often enclosed within a large multi-rayed glory, or nimbus. The equilateral triangle confirmed the Trinitarian nature of the Godhead, and the glory represented the overwhelming, inaccessible light of divine truth. This codified design became a common architectural element. It frequently appeared in Catholic Counter-Reformation art, used forcefully to emphasize doctrinal purity and divine authority against rising Protestant movements. For instance, the eye can be found above pulpits and on the spires of Central European cathedrals built during this time, serving as a powerful public declaration of faith. The placement of the eye was key. It was usually positioned at the apex of an architectural composition, the highest point of the altar or the summit of a grand arch. This placement was meant to be symbolic. The eye was literally above all earthly concerns, watching over the congregation. Its incorporation into sacred iconography, often directly alongside symbols like the Lamb of Jesus or the Holy Spirit, leaves absolutely no doubt regarding its original mainstream Christian attribution. This widespread use proves that during this formative era, the Eye of Providence was not a secret, veiled, or occult symbol. It was public, didactic, and thoroughly orthodox. Its integration into European government, seals, and later the American dollar stems directly from this Christian cultural familiarity. It was not sourced from obscure rituals. It was sourced from the common, recognizable public art of the Western European world, a symbol that had successfully migrated from ancient concepts of vigilance to the specific theological truth of Jesus, God's active providence. The transitional phase, Freemasonry. The symbol of the Eye of Providence maintained its orthodox Christian meaning throughout the 17th century. However, as the Age of Enlightenment progressed, philosophical and fraternal organizations began to adapt public religious symbolism for their own purposes, marking the symbol's first great transition. The most significant organization to adopt and reinterpret the eye was Freemasonry, which incorporated it into its own iconography toward the end of the 18th century. The primary divergence in the Masonic adoption was ideological. While the Church utilized the eye to represent the triune God and divine providence, Freemasonry employed it to represent the great architect of the universe, GAOTU. This was a deliberate choice. Freemasonry, as a fraternal organization, is not a religion, but a system of morality. Its temples and rituals welcome men of all faiths, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, etc., provided they believe in a supreme being. The generic term Jiao-Tu and the universal symbol of the eye allowed Masons to instill the principles of judgment, morality, and vigilance without endorsing any specific religious dogma. In Masonic halls, the symbol is typically known simply as the all-seeing eye and is placed centrally, often above the master's chair. It serves as a constant, powerful reminder to all members that their actions, thoughts, and conduct within and outside the lodge are observed by a supreme being who will ultimately judge their moral rectitude. This interpretation is less about the Christian doctrine of salvation and more about the Enlightenment concept of deistic judgment and personal accountability. Crucially, the timing of this adoption, occurring in the late 1700s, is critical. Freemasons did not invent the symbol. They simply borrowed a visually potent icon that was already widely recognized from its pervasive use in public churches, state seals, and Renaissance artwork. This fact fundamentally undermines the common conspiracy theory narrative that the eye originated within Freemasonry and was secretly implanted into public life. The symbol was public property long before it became a lodge emblem. While the adoption by the Masons marked the beginning of the symbol's association with fraternal secrecy, it was still centuries away from being linked to global control or shadowy cults like the Illuminati. Analyzing the US dollar, national and political symbolism. The symbol's transition from the church to the lodge, and subsequently to its most famous public placement, culminates in the Great Seal of the United States, which features the Eye of Providence positioned above an unfinished pyramid. This placement has cemented the symbol's central role in modern conspiracy theories, yet the historical record provides a much more mundane political and philosophical explanation. The Great Seal was first adopted in 1782, following the American War of Independence. Its design was the result of collaboration among various committees, with the final draft being significantly shaped by Charles Thomson, the Secretary of the Continental Congress, and artist William Barton. The key to understanding the eye's inclusion is to look at the motto accompanying the pyramid, Annuit Captis, which translates from Latin as He, Jesus, God, favors our undertakings. Here the eye is unequivocally intended as the eye of divine providence, reflecting the widespread belief among the founding generation that God had guided the establishment of the new nation. It represented the conviction that the American experiment was watched over and sanctioned by a benevolent supreme power. This interpretation directly aligns with the Christian use of the symbol popular during the Baroque era, a time when political documents frequently invoked God's favor. Furthermore, the design itself does not automatically imply a Masonic connection, despite many founders being Masons. The final design was explicitly chosen for its public, patriotic, and religious overtones, drawing on common European iconology rather than private lodge emblems. The symbol was not sourced from a secret book of rituals, but from the cultural lexicon of the 18th century, where the Eye of Providence was a common visual shorthand for national destiny, guided by God. The notion that the eye on the dollar is proof of a clandestine cabal plotting a new world order fundamentally misreads the historical and political context of the late 18th century, conflating a public declaration of faith with a secret sign of control. Conspiracy theories, the Illuminati and New World Order. The symbol's journey from the church altar to the national seal might seem complete, but its modern reputation was irrevocably shaped by its descent into the world of conspiracy theories. This phase is not a matter of theology or verifiable history, but of sociology, misidentification, and cultural amplification. The key to this phenomenon is the concept of the Illuminati. The actual, historical Bavarian Illuminati was a short-lived Enlightenment-era secret society founded in 1776, dedicated to rationalism and anti-clericalism. It was quickly suppressed and dissolved by 1785, long before the Great Seal was finalized. The real group had no known direct link to the American founding or the global power structure later attributed to them. The modern mythos of the Illuminati and its link to the all-seeing eye exploded primarily in the mid-20th century. The perceived secrecy of Freemasonry, the public placement of the eye on the dollar bill, and the general cultural anxiety surrounding unseen power structures, such as after the Cold War, provided fertile ground. Authors and entertainers merged the distinct concepts: the historical Bavarian Illuminati, the widespread presence of Freemasonry, and the ambiguous eye on the dollar into a single powerful narrative of a shadowy elite manipulating world affairs. In this context, the eye ceases to be a Christian or Masonic symbol of moral vigilance and becomes a marker of totalitarian surveillance and occult mastery. This interpretation is sustained by pop culture, where musicians, filmmakers, and digital artists intentionally deploy the eye, often coupled with the pyramid, as a recognizable shorthand for mysterious power or social satire. This cultural feedback loop ensures that the conspiratorial narrative remains dominant, overriding the centuries of documented history and theological meaning that precede it. This section serves as a crucial reminder that historical truth must be distinguished from cultural fear and imaginative storytelling. The response of the Catholic and other churches. Given the severe misrepresentation of the Eye of Providence in modern media, it is important to examine the continuous, ongoing relationship between the symbol and the religious institutions that first utilized it. The official response of the Catholic Church and various other Christian denominations has remained consistent. The symbol is, and always has been, a legitimate expression of Orthodox theology. The symbol's continued presence in historical churches serves as the clearest rebuttal to the conspiracy theories. You can find the Eye of Providence, often placed within the triangle and surrounded by glory rays, prominently displayed in numerous Catholic churches and cathedrals across Europe, often dating back to the 17th or 18th centuries. The fact that the Church, the institution most often cited as a target of the alleged Illuminati, continues to use and maintain the symbol confirms its view. Its intrinsic meaning as a representation of the Holy Trinity and Divine Providence is primary and unaffected by later external adoptions. The challenge for the Church today lies in catechesis, the education of the faithful. As lay people are increasingly exposed to media that links the symbol to occultism, priests and educators are occasionally required to clarify the iconographic history, reassuring believers that the symbol they see in a centuries-old church is not a hidden secret, but a public, orthodox declaration of God's nature. The Church does not view the Masonic or secular use of the symbol as an occult takeover, but rather as an instance of non-religious groups borrowing a potent visual tool from the established culture. Ultimately, the Church's position emphasizes the priority of meaning. The purpose of the eye in the sanctuary is to proclaim the active, loving oversight of God. This theological claim, rooted in documented scripture and centuries of artistic tradition, holds a historical weight that the mere cultural appropriation by secretive groups simply cannot diminish. Conclusion: The Eye of History and the Eye of Theology. We began our journey with a single symbol, the Eye of Providence, split between the poles of Christian piety and global conspiracy. Our comprehensive analysis of its history now allows us to render a conclusive verdict, firmly rooted in verifiable history and theological doctrine. The historical trajectory is undeniable. The Eye of Providence is fundamentally and primarily a Christian symbol. It was born from the ancient need to represent divine vigilance, standardized during the Renaissance as the visual shorthand for the Holy Trinity and Divine Providence, and adopted into mainstream European architecture and state iconography decades before the birth of the Bavarian Illuminati. Its appearance on the US dollar is a reflection of 18th century political philosophy that publicly invoked God's favor, drawing from a commonly accepted religious symbol. The contemporary association with the Illuminati is not historical fact, but a cultural phenomenon, an enduring modern myth amplified by media that thrives on combining secrecy and power. The symbol in this context has become a victim of its own success, its profound meaning distorted by those seeking a visual language for control. Ultimately, the true decipherment of the all-seeing eye lies in returning to its theological origin. It is not an emblem of a hidden elite, but an icon of divine order. It reminds the believer that the universe is governed not by chaos, but by the watchful, purposeful, and loving gaze of Jesus Christ God. This historical truth offers the greatest comfort, the symbol that conspiracy theories present as a sign of surveillance and fear, the Church presents as an assurance of provision and hope. The Eye of Providence is an enduring testament to the historical truth that all things are seen, sustained, and directed toward a final benevolent end.